Defense Minister Yoav Gallant says that the IDF is moving its central focus from Gaza to the north, warning that a major escalation with Lebanon's Hezbollah could soon be upon us. Defense Minister Gallant told officers on the northern border that the center of gravity is moving from the south to the north, and the IDF must stand ready for any scenario that may develop. Defense Minister Gallant's comment came as Hezbollah fired well over 100 rockets into the Upper Galilee, Western Galilee, and the Golan Heights, causing wildfires and structural damage. Some rockets were shot down, while others fell in open areas. Firefighters are struggling to control the blazes. About 50 launches were detected crossing from Lebanon this morning alone. Some of them were intercepted by air defense, but others fell in the Katzrin area. One person was injured as several homes were damaged in the only Israeli city in the Golan Heights. The latest barrage came after the Air Force struck a Hezbollah weapons storage facility in Baalbek, far from the Israeli border. Fighter jets also attacked a military building where Hezbollah terrorists were operating in the Al-Matmura area and a terrorist position in Beit Lif, both located in South Lebanon. Security forces busted a group of terrorists in northern Israel. A group of Israeli Arabs were arrested before carrying out an attack near the city of Carmiel. According to the police, the terrorists were planning to throw Molotov cocktails at vehicles traveling on the highway next to the city. The police identified 2 terrorists who had finished preparing a number of Molotov cocktails and filled them with flammable materials. The Shabak and police questioned the suspects, and an indictment was filed against those involved. The IDF offered details on its retrieval of the bodies of 6 Israeli hostages from Gaza. Chief of Staff Halevi met top officers in Gaza and vowed to bring back all hostages, living and dead. Chief of Staff Halevi told officers that the IDF remains determined to fight Hamas and return all the hostages, whoever we can alive, and those no longer alive, for burial in Israel. Halevi spoke of the complexities and dangers involved in the extractions.
הלילה, במבצע שהוא לא מקרי, על בסיס מודיעין שעקבו אחריו הרבה מאוד זמן והוא הלך והתפתח, היה לנו מידע על מקום שנמצאים בו חללים קבורים שלנו שנחטפו, וההליכה להביא אותם ממנהרה 10 מטרים מתחת האדמה, להגיע, לחפור, לאתר את המנהרה, להיכנס ולהביא אנשים שלנו שהיינו מאוד רוצים להביא אותם בחיים, אבל גם להביא חלל לקבר ישראל זה דבר מאוד מאוד חשוב. The 6 Israeli hostages whose bodies were recovered were all alive when taken captive. IDF spokesman Hagari said the cause of the deaths of the Israeli hostages are still being investigated.
The Hamas terror organization held the bodies of these 6 hostages in a tunnel below the city of Khan Yunis, in an area that was previously part of the humanitarian area designated by the IDF. And Hamas continues to hold another 109 hostages, including children, women, and the elderly. He's holding them in brutal conditions inside Gaza. The IDF will continue doing everything we can, in order to bring them all back home.
The war on Hamas continues. On day 320 of the war in Gaza, forces from the 252nd Division are operating in the center of Gaza, conducting joint attacks with the Air Force and the Jerusalem Brigade. Terrorists were eliminated coming out of a tunnel shaft. Forces from the 98th Division eliminated terrorists and destroyed terror infrastructure in Khan Yunis that were used to carry out rocket launches toward Israel. In several targeted raids in the area, the fighters located weapons and additional military equipment. In Doha, U.S. Secretary of State Blinken is still expressing optimism, but behind the scenes, Israeli and Hamas both say major disagreements remain unresolved, and the hostage for ceasefire talks could collapse within days. Secretary Blinken agreed with the assessment that the coming days were do or die for a deal to be reached.
Israel has now accepted that proposal. I heard that directly from Prime Minister Netanyahu yesterday. And we hope and expect that Hamas will do the same. And over the coming days, we are going to do everything possible to one, get Hamas on board with the bridging proposal, and then to make sure that both parties work on and agree to necessary details of implementation that would allow everything to go forward. On the fierce urgency of now, this needs to get done, and it needs to get done in the days ahead, and we will do everything possible to get it across the finish line.
While Israel has agreed to the U.S. bridging proposal, Prime Minister Netanyahu told a group of hostage families that he is not sure there will be a hostage for ceasefire deal, but if there is one, it must safeguard Israeli national interests.
במקביל עושים מאמץ להחזיר את החטופים בתנאים שיאפשרו את מקסום מספר החטופים המשוחררים בשלב הראשון. אני אומר את זה בצורה ברורה, זה יעד שאני הצבתי. אבל הדבר הנוסף הוא לשמר את הנכסים הביטחוניים האסטרטגיים שלנו מול לחצים גדולים, מבית ומן החוץ, ואנחנו עומדים בזה.
According to Israel's Channel 12, the updated U.S. bridging proposal has been received by Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar. According to the report, the Israeli assessment is that Sinwar will stick with Hamas's current public position, which is to reject the proposal. Well, on the sidelines of the Democratic National Convention, thousands gathered at Chicago's Hostage Square to honor the victims of the October 7th massacre and the hostages still held by Hamas. The exhibit, organized by the Israel-American Council, featured powerful artworks and provided a space for Jewish Americans to show solidarity with the affected families. Full story from ILTV's editor, Mayan Hoffman.
Thousands of people gathered yesterday to visit Chicago's Hostage Square, a powerful exhibit dedicated to the victims of the October 7th massacre and the hostages still held by Hamas. The one-day installation was near the United Center, close to the Democratic National Convention. Several delegates visited the exhibit throughout the day. Due to security concerns, visitors were asked to register to receive the exact location of the exhibit. Thousands of pro-Palestinian rioters were in the area as well. The exhibit, organized by the Israeli-American Council, featured 10-foot-tall milk cartons with hostage photos, and Israeli artists showcased new, large-scale artworks related to October 7 and the hostages. Jewish Americans living far from Israel were able to visit the exhibit to pray and express solidarity with the families of the hostages. Some families were present for interviews and to meet visitors. Yesterday, the IDF recovered the bodies of 6 elderly hostages who had been killed in captivity, at least one by Hamas, with others possibly killed by Israeli airstrikes. It is believed that 109 hostages remain in captivity, with at least 73 confirmed alive.
And I'm so happy to be joined now by influencer Emily Austin. I have to tell you that this morning I woke up to a message from a very dear friend sending me a video clip of you from Fox saying, you must have this woman on, and here you are.
Wow, honored.
All right, but before we begin, I owe our viewers an apology. Amid 300 days of covering the war and nearly 35 years in journalism, I can come across as grumpy. We have limited airtime and we need to get answers to the crucial questions on the agenda. I've been interrupting guests and some viewers have commented that I've been rude. Emily, I will try to be nice.
I'm the wrong person to start being nice to. I could handle the scrutiny.
She said because you're from Fox News or you're
in New
on.
York, being a Jew in America, it's hard.
First thing I need to ask you, there are these visuals that we're going to be showing of an Orthodox Jewish gathering within the context of the Democratic National Convention, and they were raided by anti-Israel protesters. I can only think to say that this is anti-Semitism, pure and simple.
Of course, and the fact that anyone seems to pretend that they're surprised by that, to me, at what point do you have the wake-up call? Following October 7th, I want to remind the Jewish people of America, we received no pity. We received very few condemnations from a handful of politicians who acted pro-Israel for merely a few weeks before the narrative of Israel is committing genocide started to take hold of all of the narrative, pretty much besides Fox News. So with that, you see the Democratic...
about the media.
What?
The media.
The media, the people, the media influences the people. And when it's predominantly showing the nastiest sides of Israel, that's all false. It is all lies. And that's what the people believe. You see these protests. But it stems from the Democratic Party. So when you see that this is happening there, well, you keep voting for them. So why do you act surprised when the result is the same? Learn from your mistakes. The election's in November, and there are still Jewish people that will choose to vote for Kamala.
Well, there are people who describe themselves as American Jewish Zionists that are on the Democratic and on the Republican side. I must say, I know many people on both sides. And sometimes it's important for Israel that we actually have a bipartisan message that's going out there. For example, yesterday Bibi said he accepts the U.S. bridging proposal. Hamas still rejects it. Isn't that a good time for Jews on both sides of the aisle to just jump together and say, it's Hamas, it's not Israel?
Of course, absolutely. And Jews need to remain united whether we mean it or not. Meaning right now there's a lot of Jews in the United States that are publicly fighting with each other over politics. Now is not the time to show our vulnerability and our divisiveness. It's just not the time and place. We have to show that we can stick together. However, if you know that in the election you're voting for one person, Donald Trump, who has unapologetically stood by Israel and received a lot of backlash, versus Kamala Harris and Joe Biden, who are currently in office and not doing enough to protect the Jewish people, then the choice is pretty clear. Of course, America first, I understand. But if you're a Jewish person and you care about Israel and you don't see that there is two paths and one of them leads to destruction, you have a weak leader that Hamas is not afraid of, Hamas does not respect. By the way, Gaza is just one part of it. Russia, China, I'm not even going to get into that. We're not respected diplomatically, internationally. Trump was respected. Trump started the Abraham Accords. Why hasn't Joe Biden done one thing to progress the Abraham Accords in 4 years? Kamala is acting like she wasn't the VP.
Just by the way, he did try to advance the Saudi normalization, which almost got to the finish line. Let me ask you this. I know that you recently had a meeting with Donald Trump. I think we have a picture that we're going to put up. I think you called him on social media your new
My bestie.
But he's been saying some things that are really divisive. Not
Such
things
as?
that are... Well, I mean, there have been comments attributed to him where he called Doug a crappy Jew. This is the man who might be the first man...
I agree with him.
A crappy Jew?
Very crappy Jew.
What does that even mean?
He has a daughter raising money for Gaza, who's always posting Free Palestine. Yesterday at the DNC was the first time he's been really proud of his Judaism. And I think he knows because they're losing the Jewish vote. But genuinely, if they cared about the Jewish people, his wife, the vice president, would not have initiated post-October 7th a narrative to combat Islamophobia. Islamophobia is wrong. But in light of anti-Semitism, you don't focus on something that's not the primary issue. And that's what they're doing. They're tolerating the protests. Every democratic city in the country right now are letting these terrorist-loving protesters take over. They're hijacking college campuses. They're targeting Jewish people. They go to jail. They're arrested for one night. They're gone the next morning. And we don't feel safe. What kind of leadership has the tiniest group of people feeling unsafe walking in the streets, and they don't do anything about it? But God forbid it was another group of people, you know something would have been done about it.
You do know that there's been quite a lot of support coming from the U.S. administration for Israel. We're talking about many billions in military aid. We're talking about working together toward a hostage for ceasefire deal. Don't we need a little bit more of unity talk between Jews on both sides of the aisle and less of this political division talk?
So, yes and no. The election's coming up.
Sorry, we're almost out of time.
I understand. So the election's coming up, and now's the time to hopefully have the president you want to win. If Kamala Harris is the president, I will comply. I will respect her as the president. I will have no choice, frankly. But I hope Donald Trump wins. And usually I have not been vocal about that the last 4 years. But now I see it as an existential crisis for the Jewish people. I prefer it's Trump. If that's Kamala, I will do my best to try to support her. And there's a lot of Jews rallying behind her that I know will be in her corner. And I hope she takes their word to heart and she tries to listen to them. But personally, I just don't think that they will.
Well, Emily, thanks so much for being with us. I hope I wasn't too grumpy.
No, not grumpy at all.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, European human rights groups are pressuring the UK and Denmark to impose an arms embargo on Israel. But while the UK is considering it, Denmark has firmly rejected the idea. Why does Denmark believe that Israel has a right to defend itself? More from ILTV's Mayan Hoffman.
European human rights groups are continuing to pressure the United Kingdom and Denmark to impose an arms embargo on Israel. While the new Labour government in the UK has indicated it is considering such a ban, Denmark's government and parliament are firmly rejecting it. These latest petitions are part of a legal effort led by pro-Palestinian and human rights organizations, including Al-Haq, Amnesty International, Oxfam, and Human Rights Watch. Countries like Italy, Spain, and Belgium have already voluntarily frozen defense exports to Israel due to the ongoing war. However, Denmark has maintained a relatively pro-Israel stance, continuing weapons sales, including parts for Israel's F-35 fighter jets. The NGOs argue that repeated F-35 strikes on Palestinian civilians could put Denmark in violation of international law, as these jets contain critical components manufactured by a Danish defense company. Despite this, Denmark's president and foreign minister have affirmed Israel's right to self-defense. In late May, the Danish parliament overwhelmingly rejected a proposal from the opposition to halt the transfer of weapons and security equipment to Israel, with a vote of 84-11. The Danish foreign minister has stated that Denmark is not guilty and has called for the court to dismiss the lawsuit. Denmark is historically pro-Israel. The country in 2018 declared that it would not fund organizations that have ties to terrorists, engage in attempts to boycott Israel, or question its right to exist.
And now, via Zoom, we go to an Israeli who's been living in Denmark for more than 3 decades to talk about the situation on the ground and what, in her opinion, might be keeping Denmark so pro-Israel even during this difficult time. Welcome, Yael Farhi Gravesen. Yael, thanks for being with us. Most European countries have enacted some form of arms embargo on Israel during the war. Do you think Denmark would be so steadfast in refusing?
I don't know if they will continue to refuse. I just know that it's actually a weird question because when you say most European, it's not correctly because actually the biggest arm producer are United States and Germany, and if they will make an arm embargo, it will actually be noticeable, but not other countries like, for example, the UK. They maybe share like 2% of this part, and that will not mean so much. So I don't know if it's mean so much as it sounds.
Do you think that there has been a very pro-Israel attitude from the start of the war, at least by the Danish government?
The Danish government generally is pro-Israel. I have been living in Denmark for 40 years, and I don't remember that it's actually been changed. So I don't think so. It will change. The majority is actually supporting Israel.
Yael, what about the situation on the ground for Jews? Are you finding a rise in anti-Semitism?
Yeah, of course there is. Since the 7th of October, it has always been like in the rest of Europe. But since the 7th of October, of course, it's increased tremendously. The Jewish community and the police get more complaints about different things, especially on the social media. But I must admit, if you compare Denmark to, for example, Sweden, to Malmö or Paris or London, then actually we are quite safe here. And I need to express that the Danish military, especially the police, but also the soldiers, they're actually protecting and guarding us all over, in the synagogue, in the Jewish school, in Chabad house. When we hold some kind of events, they're always there to protect us. So I think we are quite safe if I compare it with other countries in Europe. Denmark is actually dealing with this quite exemplary. I mean, quite good.
Well, do you expect, well, let me ask you this. Does the Jewish community take a proactive, pro-Israel stance of go out there and demonstrate for the freedom of the hostages at all? And by the way, we're almost out of time, just so you know.
Yes, the Jewish community, for the first, they take care of the Danish Jews. I mean, it's not that it's not for them to deal with political issues from Israel. They take care of the Danish Jews, and they do all what they can to support us. We have a special unit that actually can collect all kind of complaints if there is any, and this group actually delivered to the police, and they deal with this. So in this part, yes, and they support Israel. Of course, support maybe not the political government, but they support in solidarity the Israeli people. They support the fact, and of course, the fact that Israel have the right to exist, like the Danish government. We don't have issue with that. Yeah.
Yael, thank you so much for being with us. Be safe, and good luck to you in Denmark.
Thank you.
Well, Israeli travelers have some options for last-minute summer trips, as several airlines have resumed flights to and from Tel Aviv. However, the ongoing conflict continues to disrupt air travel, with major carriers extending suspensions. ILTV's Mayan Hoffman has more.
Good news for Israeli travelers looking for a last-minute summer getaway. Aegean Airlines, Greece's national carrier, will resume flights tomorrow from Tel Aviv to Athens. Air Europe will also restart operations, offering a daily flight to Madrid. Tarom Airlines is set to temporarily resume flights between Israel and Bucharest on August 23rd. However, Delta Airlines, a U.S.-owned company, announced yesterday that it is extending its suspension of flights to and from Tel Aviv's Ben Gurion Airport until at least September 30th, citing ongoing conflict in the region. This extends their previous suspension, which was through August 31st. Other airlines, like LOT and ITA, have already extended their suspensions indefinitely. The Lufthansa Group announced that flights would be canceled until at least August 26, while Ryanair has suspended flights until the end of September, with a possible extension. Yesterday, around 61,200 passengers passed through Ben Gurion Airport on 359 flights, the airport's authority said. Approximately 31,000 passengers departed the country, while 30,200 arrived. Passenger numbers in recent days have ranged between 55,000 and 62,000 daily, down from 60,000 to 75,000 in July before the latest wave of cancellations. In a normal August, without war, more than 80,000 passengers would typically pass through Ben Gurion daily. Air travel has been heavily impacted by the ongoing conflict. After October 7th, most airlines halted flights to Israel, only to resume later. However, operations were disrupted again after Iran launched over 300 missiles and drones at Israel in mid-April. Although some flights resumed, recent threats of a strike by Iran or Hezbollah have led to another wave of cancellations.
And I am thrilled to invite you to ILTV's very first community webinar. This is your chance to connect directly with our editor-in-chief, Mayan Hoffman, and to dive into the questions you care about most regarding Israel. The webinar kicks off on September 3rd and is exclusively for our app subscribers. If you're already part of the ILTV family, watch your inbox for a registration link. Not a subscriber yet? No worries, there's still time to join us. Simply scan the QR code and become part of the ILTV community. And let's take a look at the weather forecast. It's been hot all of August, and today is no exception. Tonight we'll have lows of around 25 Celsius or 77 Fahrenheit. And then tomorrow, highs averaging 95 Fahrenheit or about 35 degrees Celsius. And that's a wrap for today's news. For the latest updates from Israel on all of your devices, be sure to follow our ILTV channels, subscribe to our newsletter, and explore our website, iltv.tv. Stay informed with the latest news straight from the heart of Israel. I'm Steve Leibowitz. Shalom. Thanks for watching, and let's bring those hostages home.